It's part two of our conversation with Badfinger photographer Christian Trieber. I'm John Beaudin from Rock History Music. As we said in part one, I always look at Badfinger as the group that had probably the worst luck ever. They ran into a manager, Stan Pauli, in North America, who was accused basically of keeping all the money they made in that country. They had a great deal with Apple Records. After a while, that went away, and two of the members committed suicide. After this clip with Christian Trieber, we'll announce our first winner of a print from his collection. We asked you, and we're doing this again this time around. Now, if you already entered, you don't have to enter again. You can only enter once. In the first video, we asked you to pick one of Christian's prints from his website and tell us which print you wanted to win. The rules are you have to be subscribed to this channel. You have to pick a print and let us know which one you want to win if you do win, and you have to put it in the description of this video. If you haven't already, please do so. There's still time. There's two more prints to win. And at the end of this video, we'll announce the first winner from photographer Christian Trieber. Our conversation on the band Badfinger. With Pete, what would you like, people who are curious about him to know about him that maybe they don't know? Because you knew him quite well.
Yeah. I'll give you a story. I don't know if I told this one before. I had a friend of mine, I think I did tell you it before, a friend of mine that was in a band called Shadow, which I managed. I have a CD of their music. But anyway, we went to see, I didn't have a car half the time to get around, so he drove me to New Jersey to meet or Pennsylvania to meet the group. And while we were there, we were talking to Pete, and he was just totally blown over. He just couldn't believe how nice a guy was. He remarked to me about this later on. He said, I just can't believe how down to earth and how unspoiled and nice and really caring he is. And I said, that's Pete for you. I said, unfortunately, in many cases, he's too trusting. And my friend said, yeah, I can understand that. And when we asked him to go out to dinner with us, Pete insisted on paying the bill. He says, I'll go out with you for dinner, but I'll pay for the bill. When you become rock stars, talking to my friend, he says, then you can take me out to dinner and you can pay the bill. But that's the way he was.
Unspoiled is I think, one of the nicest compliments you can say about somebody.
Yeah, I often wonder what would have happened if basically all the touring and stuff, which was a really hard thing to do, and it took its toll on all the members of the group, on me to a point, but if that had stayed together, if Dixie and Pete had stayed together, whether the whole thing would have turned out differently. Well, I also wonder if Joey hadn't joined the band, and if they kept Rod Griffith in the band, whether the whole thing would have still continued to go like it was going and did go, but the same ending wouldn't have happened also.
You know what? As they say, you change one chink in any chain or change anything in the process, it could change everything, right? And I believe that. You go right instead of left, right? Everything changes.
Yeah, because, you can hear, if you listen to any of the early Ivy's music and then some of the stuff on the Badfinger, which the Ivy's wrote also, which is carried over into the name Badfinger for Magic Christian music, basically, you can see the progression going there. Mm-hmm. And you can also see by looking at some of the early Ivy's tapes that Pete was really, really, really holding back on the guitar. He was a master. There's no other word for it. And yet he was holding back and staying to simple chords and stuff. It's only with Timeless that he really let loose. And on that blues song also, the one I sent you the track of the blues song, where there was a pause on stage, they didn't know what the next song was, and rather than keep the discussion going, Pete just tore into a blues riff and wrote it on the spot.
I know, that's wild. That's a real musician, man. And the thing is, being able to do it on the spot is not a necessity, but it certainly adds credence. It puts you a little higher up there. Was Pete he seemed like a very introspective kind of deep thinker, curious brain kind of guy.
Yeah. I would say very much like in some ways Taylor Swift, a lot of his songs came from relationships that he had with different women. Percentage of his stuff came from that. Wrote about what he knew. But he'd write about everything. If you look at some of the early stuff that Dan had released on the solo albums by Pete, I don't know if you ever heard of either two of them, but basically he had songs like Silly Vibe or Vibe, which was about one of his girlfriends. And another one, it's like all of the songs really related to stuff in his personal life. And even stuff with the time he wrote Hey Mr. Manager and Rock and Roll Contract I mean, they really reflected in their songs what they were talking about, what their life was. Even in things on Perfection, where he talked about you don't need a gun or a knife. Again, he's talking about violence in the world, which abhorred him. I mean, I don't know if I think I sent you that picture too, where we on that one day off that they had on the whole tour, and we were in this park. Where's Pete? He's sitting on a rock with a 8mm camera, photographing or video or making a movie of ants. But that's the way he was. He loved people. He loved nature. He was really down to earth, great type of guy.
With the partnership that they seem to have, Pete and Tommy, what did you see there? Were they really in sync? Were they opposites? Why did that work so well?
They were definitely opposites. I mean, this is again my personal opinion. I think Tommy's problem was he was bipolar, because he'd have very, very wide mood swings. And when he was fine and down to earth, he was great, worked great as a musician, nice guy, all the rest of it. And then other times he'd go in these mood swings and he'd just get drunk all the time.
Did they ever talk about like their misfortune with you, the things that were going on with them?
No, we didn't discuss business at all, simply because I didn't ask, because I wanted to stay out of the picture. I felt it wasn't my place to ask. But at the same time, if they'd asked me or brought it up to me, like the whole situation when George decided to do the Bangladesh concert and only produced half of their album straight up, I suggested that Todd Rundgren be brought in. Because I'd known Todd through Paul Fishin. I was friends with a guy named Alan, I want to say Goldfarb, but wasn't that Alan Gold something or other. He was one of the big A&R guys at the time. I became very, very close with him. And through him, I met Paul Fishin, who was also at Warner Brothers, but on a label called Bearsville Records, which was owned by Bob Dylan's manager, Bob Grossman, I think his name was, and also Paul Fishin. And I'd known Paul for quite a while. I met Todd as a result of Paul, and because I'd always been a big fan of the Nas. And so I couldn't think of anybody else other than him, because he was just such an amazing producer. And I knew that he would bring the best out in the group. He was a taskmaster, but he wouldn't settle for second best. Mm-hmm. He would get him to do it over and over and over and over and over again. The things were perfect. That's the way Todd was. But Badfinger had never heard of them, apparently, or Bill Collins. We were actually, I met them at Lou Christie's apartment, the guy that did Lightning Strikes. That's where they were at the time we met there. And I told him, I said, why don't I do this? I'll go over to Paul. I'll get a bunch of Todd's albums. And if you can get me some albums from your label, I'll give them to Paul. We'll switch albums, and then hopefully a deal can be made. And I don't know exactly what happened after that, whether the final decision, I guess, was still up to George. But George knew of Todd, liked the production, and decided to go that way. So Todd finished the album.
There you go, part 2 of 3 on the band Badfinger. I've been wanting to do something on this band. I mean, I remember on Facebook I put down, name me a group that sounds like the Beatles. And Badfinger came up appropriately. Of course, some of the Beatles performed on their albums. They were signed to the Beatles' Apple Records. They were the first group signed, and they ran into a lot of bad luck. Anyway, winner of a first print is Tessa Mahler. She subscribes to our YouTube channel, and I don't have it here, but I think she picked a Badfinger picture. Anyway, we've contacted her already. If you've already entered, there's 2 more chances to win. You don't have to enter again. The rules are you have to be subscribed to this channel. Go into Christian's website. There'll be links in the description of this video. Pick the print you want to win if you win, and we'll contact you if your name gets picked. More from Christian Trieber coming up next week, part 3 of our Badfinger special. I'm John Beaudin. Make sure you comment on our video, subscribe to our channel, and share our videos. Hey, and buy a t-shirt. Support our channel. This is Rock History Music.